So, Dilip, I'm going to come straight to the point. You've been, head of health and fitness, and you yourself have been an athlete. What is that you're looking in terms of, from a visionary point of view, where are we headed in this space? Now that we've looked at the past, how are we going to progress? Or is there some, you've been an athlete, so what are the challenges you have seen from an athlete perspective? And how have they been sort of overcome now in the recent times after looking at the past?
First of all, Rishi, thank you, and a very good morning to everyone. It's very exciting to see everyone show up early morning on a weekday just to hear about sports. Um, you've been very kind to call me an athlete, but I have to tell with all disclaimer that I got into sports more as a reason to come out of midlife crisis. I've never been, yeah, much like a lot of people around me, I was not an athlete in my school or college, but I had a very unhealthy, unfit life, and sports was a anchor for me to come out of it. But I can't be more thankful to sport because today, who am I? My job, my identity. I mean, the people I know, it's all because of sports in just last few years. So I think thank you and great work by you and the entire team to put together this amazing setup. And again, while I was looking at the video, the one thing which struck me is this choice of word you had around sculptors, right? It's just such a beautiful word. I think in the industry we are today, coaches, trainers, we tend to miss out, the real definition and acknowledgement of who these people are. But sculptors, and I'm going to take this word, from you and probably.
I just told him that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll have to extrapolate a lot on that, but it's just a beautiful word. And to your point, we just need more sculptors. I mean, India has been lucky, and we've had some amazing sculptors across different sports. But as a country, we have to accept that we are, even today, we are a sporting spectator sports country. We are not a sports playing country. And we need a lot of these sculptors to create and hone, icons or idols and great athletes. Only then this entire generation which is going to come will look up and start playing sports. And it's up to all of us and not just a government or a certain authority to create them. We have to first be sculptors at home, at our locality, at our workplace, and then sports has to become a mainstream conversation, and only then we can kind of have some great athletes coming for the future. So I think I would urge everyone to go back home and when you're looking at your kid, think about yourself as a sculptor, and that would pave out a bright future of sport for us.
That's very encouraging. Thank you for your kind words and the encouragement once again. You've always been a great cheerleader, and you always, cheer people whenever they are trying to do something new. So thank you once again for the encouragement. Dipti, you've had a very interesting journey. So, probably few of them know about it, but let's go back to 2008. I think you've been a banker, then you've been an athlete, and now with the foundation. So maybe you could share your journey in terms of 2008 to 2000, a quick sort of you've also been a sculptor, obviously. You are, helping athletes, building an infrastructure in terms of also looking at how we can win, create more athletes within the country. So maybe you could share your journey in terms of what do you feel at this moment?
Thank you, Rishi, and congratulations to the entire team, and a very good morning to everyone. I'm just probably going to add to what Dilip said in terms of what are we really doing. I've been very fortunate and privileged to be from a place called Coorg, and the two things we do very well is sport, or we're in the forces. So pretty much growing up, we had access to a lot of playing, and it was not about Olympics or Paralympics, but it was just play sport, move, be healthy. So I think growing up was that, and till date, I think my parents play tennis every day in the morning, so I have no excuses, in that sense. But I went through the normal route of playing sport. I tried to pursue it. I played for Karnataka tennis, and then I played up to Bangalore University for basketball. I was dabbling between two sports, but at no point there was a conversation on what's next, right? And it's really expensive, and this is like good 15, 20 years ago. So pursuing sport was really tough. And then I went on, did my MBA, got my placements, and on day zero, all you want is to get a job. And so I got into HSBC at that point of time. But through my entire stint in the bank, every probably few months, I would feel like, what am I doing? Why am I working so hard? What is my purpose? What am I going to do? And the sports just stays in your head. And 2012 for me was a turning point where, a lot of people, a bunch of my friends and colleagues were like, the Olympics was going on, and they were like, why are you watching the Olympics? Change the channel. In the evening we had gone to a restaurant, and then I was like, why would all of us as Indians feel like we have to change a channel and watch something else when the Olympics is on? And they were like, we're never going to make it. We don't have it in us. So something bothered me at that point of time, and I was very fortunate to then meet our trustees, Nandan and everybody else, who had this vision that India can do well in sport, and with a very simple vision of, can we empower the next generation and future Olympians and Paralympians. So I think that's how it started. We're now 16 years old, so it's been a long, long journey. We've seen 3 Olympic cycles. We've been part of over 250 odd athlete journeys. We've had 50 Olympians and Paralympians through our cohort. But I think we've learned every cycle, and it's thanks to different stakeholders. Earlier, it was only about money, right? Is there money available? Can you give them money for a competition? Can you buy shoes? Can you do this? That's how we earlier started. But as we went along, I think different people who understood that the worst case scenario in sport is being healthy and living a good life, right? That's the worst case scenario. You can't have anything wrong. So through the Go Sports journey, for us, it's about building role models for Indian sport. Medal is just an outcome. It may happen, it may not happen. And sport is brutal. Out of the 100 that actually make it, 1 might get us the medal. The 99 are going to lose. So what happens to them? How do we build that culture? So we are very excited about the process, the path, excellence. It's worth pursuing. Be the best version of yourself. You make it, great. If you don't make it, pay it forward. Come back into the system. So that's really been our journey, and I've been very fortunate to be part of. My dream when I left the bank was I want to work with one athlete who makes it to the Olympics. So I think I have I manifested it, and I've got that opportunity to be part of so many journeys. And also my colleagues are here, so I will give a shout out to them later.
Welcome to Sports Science Summit. You made a point that, you've seen almost 12 years of the journey. Would you like to share some success story of an athlete which will really, which has really touched you or the foundation? I'm sure there are many, but one of those, which we could sort of bring out.
I think what just came to my mind is Deepa Karmakar. I think that was a incredible story, because we keep talking about access, we keep talking about availability, equipment, and here was this girl, Deepa, in the northeast of India, who picked up gymnastics and who actually finished 4th at the Rio Olympics, missed the medal by I mean, it was amazing to see that journey, and we keep thinking, how is it possible to actually win when you're in such a remote part of the country? But that is the power of talent that we have in the country. So I think Deepa has been very special. Chirag Satvik, the badminton boys, when we picked them up, I think they were not even playing together. They were playing with other partners who are much shorter in height. And I remember this conversation with Gopi at that point of time, and he's like, we have to start investing into men's doubles and women's doubles. Nobody is doing that. Everybody is just looking at badminton, and we obviously had Sindhu, we had Saina, we had some incredibly talented athletes. So Chirag, Satvik were playing with shorter partners at that point of time, and then we kind of rejigged and got them to play, and the rest is history. To be world number one for a continuous, set of weeks and weeks and weeks, and make it to the Olympics. Yes, we were heartbroken in Paris, but getting to the Olympics is a incredibly special deal. So I think these three stand out, but out of 200 athletes, each one of them have an incredible journey.
You can see the passion and the way Dipti is expressing about it. It's like giving me goosebumps. But many congratulations to all the athletes. They have made us proud by participating. That brings me to the next very important question, Dilip, that, looking at the investments in the health and fitness sector, we are all aiming for world championships and so on, and Olympics, definitely. So how do you see sports science playing a role in terms of innovation, and, what's the growth pattern there you're looking at in terms of the journey?
Yeah, I mean, I have a vantage point of being an outsider and insider. Outsider from a point of view of not playing an elite sport, an insider just an enthusiast of sports. I think sports science is going to be the difference between being an athlete who's participating and the athlete who is on the podium, right? Look at the numbers, like in the US, on an average, and spends on an athlete is roughly around $100,000. So let's say 80, 90 lakh rupees. In India, it's around 1 to 2 lakh. So that's not even a comparison, forget, right? So sports science in the 21st century are the tools what every athlete should get access to, not just to win, but just to perform, right? So 20, 30 years back, these were good shoes, right, or jerseys. Today, it's packed with science and technology from head to toe, right? Different aspects, right? For them to perform, for them to be remain injury-free, to be healthy both mentally and physically. Like I said, my vantage point is I get to meet so many innovators and entrepreneurs. That's my day job, and it's so hard. Because I only get to work with very few, I can't work with all, but such amazing technologies are being built in India, right? I think 5-7 years back, maybe Deepti can attest, technologies have to be brought in from US, Europe, and there was a wait list. Now there are people who are building in India for Indian athletes. I know for sure, we have invested in companies where these technologies have been used by academies and clubs in US and Europe, which are very hard for them to even create, right? So it's very critical. I think, like I said, it's the difference between just being a participatory athlete or getting on the podium.
So that, again, it's a continuation to my first question in terms of, do you suggest there are any specific type of sports technology or, health products which we need to focus going forward, which will, change the numbers, or since you're interacting with the industry very closely, and, I'm sure you, you look at the product and you look at it from an investment perspective, that, this will benefit. This is going to be the great big thing for us in terms of, health products or technology. Is there something which you've come across, probably you could share?
Yeah, like I said, there are tons, right? For me, the best validation is when I get to talk to athletes, right? So I was meeting Pranay, Rohan Bapana, they say what do they need, right? But I think overarchingly, couple of things which stand out is which is also underrated, is the intersection of technology around mental health, right? So we kind of speak a lot and give a lot of focus on physical health and fitness. Athletes know it. That's what they aspire. That's in their DNA. They don't need kudos or Instagram posts for people to go back and train. That's intrinsic in them. But almost every athlete today struggle with mental health issues, right? Because there is this pressure about performing, showing up, women athletes in particular. So I think mental health is an area where we look into very deeply, both from an everyday athlete perspective and for elite athletes. And then, of course, recovery management tools, because that's an area where I feel science is also getting evolved pretty rapidly. Right? The thin line between overtraining and undertraining, because we live in an era where we all celebrate hustle, go hard, move hard, burn yourself. So athletes sleep, coaches inject the same endorphins to them all the time. So that's an area where I feel technology can play a very critical role, just to be very methodical, analytical, data-driven approach to say, hey, you are tired, you are fatigued. Maybe today you might have to take it moderate level. Tomorrow you probably take a little rest, bring your HRV at a good level, and then go back tomorrow and do an intense session. So these two in particular is something which I am also seeing a lot of innovation, but across, nutrition, performance management, everywhere there's great tools, but yeah, these two in particular.
Dipti, this question is to us, not a question, a pointer basically. We all talk about grassroots level development. So what is the role in terms of the foundation? Are we doing any initiatives, any specific initiatives which you would like to highlight in terms of grassroots level development? How do you go about it, and how can we look at that section? Because that's very, very important when we're looking at the future. In terms of athlete development or identification of talent. And how do we create that awareness? We even as Sports Planet are looking at how we can touch grassroots level development. And that is where we have to look at the future. So is there any suggestions you have or anything on that side?
Yeah, I think from an India perspective, if you look at our youth population, right, we have the highest number of children under the age of 21, which means that is a very huge percentage, and we have to talk about movement, physical activity, physical literacy. Today, the challenge that we have with most kids are they're not able to jump, they're not able to throw, they're not able to move fast because that exposure is not there. And COVID has been such a bad time for that because movement has not happened. So learning has not happened, which otherwise would happen outside. So when you talk about talent identification or scouting now, it's a slightly different model because you can't go like the past where in schools they were playing. But obviously you have some fantastic organizations like Sports Village and everybody else, working with schools and doing some good work. But for us, we don't go into grassroots because we feel we are not equipped or trained to be working in that space. When we started the foundation, we believed that almost 80 to 85% of athletes drop out at a national level. So somehow athletes are making it from state to national. But from national to international to then the Olympics and Paralympics, that's the ladder we want to cover. But we've recently actually started a very interesting project. I don't know how many of you know the Siddhi tribe. They are actually based in North Karnataka. They have African lineage and they were brought in as slaves 200 years ago into India. So we're actually doing a very interesting project, and this particular group that started working with them in a span of 3 years already saw national champions because they're genetically built to run really well. So that is an interesting project that we've started. We are also doing a project with states. And I think very important that we talk about this because sport is a state subject. And if states don't use those budgets into developing all these processes, organizations like us and Dilip's and everybody else will be just feeding into the system wherever possible. We're only going to catch the ones who make it. Right? But the system has to get built, and that is through state support. So we are doing something with Arunachal Pradesh. We keep talking about the Northeast and the talent over there, and it's incredible. Arunachal has never had an Olympian or Paralympian so far. So we're building an elite athlete development program for them and working with some talented athletes. So I think this audience plays such an important role because today there is funding, I feel. And thanks to corporate India, thanks to CSR, thanks to generous folks like Dilip and Rainmatter and everyone, I think there is funding. But the point constantly becomes, who do we fund? What is different? What is niche? What are you doing that is going to impact maybe not immediately. And anything that all of you are working on is not short term, right? It's not something that you'll see results in 2 months and 3 months. And I feel as a community, we talk very short term. It has to be an Olympic cycle, it has to be 8 years, 10 years. And so when you say grassroots, and you spoke about the 2036 Olympics, the kids who are currently 10, 11, 12, 13 will be our athletes, right?
Absolutely.
So we need to start working with them rather than funding the top more and more and more. I mean, if some of them can sustain, and I'm going to use Rohan Bopanna's name here, very few Rohans and Dravids and Sachins who can last a 20, 25-year career. The others, it's very short-lived. So how do you, A, increase longevity and then be able to sustain?
Dilip, your thoughts on this on grassroots level? How do we go about it in terms of, though we are talking about the sports ecosystem, anything you feel which we can, definitely state contribution has to come. I think we have people from Sports Authority of India who are also trying their best. From a funding perspective, how do you look at it at the grassroots level? Is there some kind of engagement, or are you looking at how you could sort of look at a separate investment for it? Is there some strategy in place for that?
Yeah, look, I think most of our investment approaches are driven by first principles, that is problem statement. What would that investment entail in terms of solution? Is it short term, is it mid term, or long term, right? So let's say 2036 Olympics, right? What do we do today so that we have not medal winners, but we have more athletes who pursue and who have dreams to go and represent the country? So you create that as a base level, and then perhaps, you hone them, you nurture them, and then you have medal winners, right? So at a grassroots level, the problem sets are very different. Like, I mean, in cities like Bangalore, Delhi, Bombay, it's more about, hey, which is the closest badminton center for me, or which is the closest swimming pool for me. In rural India, for, I don't know, maybe 50, 100 kilometers, there's no sports infrastructure, right? One is that we can read, second is that we have to go there, and then we have to see, even the ones which we have, they are in such a bad condition that they're not usable, right? So the government would do their jobs, they can do their jobs, but look, that's the government, right? I mean, they have their own charter. I think as public, as private individuals, we also have a role. We could always find ways to support other teams. So we decided to go and support, Deepti's team at, Go Sports, and then we did a few other organizations, Olympic Gold Quest, Simply Sports, because these are teams who have done that work. They have a very nuanced knowledge. And they teach us more, and they tell us, look, these are the problem statements, right? It would take a lot of learning come for us to go do it and perhaps build our own foundation. We don't want to do that. So we would rather want to support someone. So what we do is we find these organizations where we can support, either through capital or through other means. Second is, one of the interesting points which I crossed path a few months back was that 30 million young girls drop out of school because they don't get good menstrual hygiene conditions. 30 million young girls, right? These are girls who can play sport, or, they just don't get those right sanitizing conditions. What can we do there? I mean, there could be, again, an infrastructure which just could be built, right? And I was speaking with someone at Simply Sports Foundation who was telling me that when women athletes go through their menstrual cycle, they feel very intimidated to even go and talk to their male coaches, because male coaches don't understand that. And even if they understand, they would say, hey, that's okay, you can just go back and play. And that just brings them into fatigue and creates metabolic disorders, which they just get injured, right? So there's a lot we can do from an encouragement infrastructure point of view. Second, which I feel everyone can do, is make sports a mainstream conversation. Just not get limited to when Olympics happens or Asian Games happens or Commonwealth happens, which is a quarterly or a biannually thing. We should just speak about it every week. Right? Just go, we all have a tool called social media. Just go, write, talk about athletes. Because athletes' job is to train and perform. Their job is not to go and talk about the accolades, what they have done. And they're not trained and designed like that, right? If you look at the celebrities, the Bollywood, they have a entourage of team who would take pictures and talk about it. Athletes are not engineered like that. What we can go do is just pick one athlete, just go and talk about their story, write about their story. 10 people will share it, right? And just becomes a mainstream conversation. And we have so many athletes, right? So, I mean, these are basic toolkits, what we can do. But like I said, from an infrastructure point of view, from a community development point of view, and more, again, from a policy point of view, right? I mean, CSR, sports, it's a very big contribution. So I think those three tangents is what we can do as a part of being a corporate, talk to your HR teams to find ways to support foundations, have these mainstream conversations so that athletes also feel, non-cricket athletes also feel that they also deserve some attention.
When we talk about sport, I think the first thing is sport is for all of us. It is not for able-bodied, and everyone should be able to play sport in school, in our societies, in our apartments. And I think when we started Go Sports, we were very clear that there is an Olympics and there is a Paralympics, and it is called the parallel of the Olympics. So we should just work with athletes because they are pursuing excellence, and they also want to, just like us, get to their best potential. So in our day-to-day lives, in our work environments, I think we all have opportunities to get people with disabilities to feel like us, and I think we all have a role in that. There's usually an angle of sympathy, which they, para-athletes, at least in my experience now working with them, just want to be treated like you and me. They don't want anything special, they don't want anything extra. They just, like us, want to say hello and make friends and have a community. So, disability sport, whatever program you're working on, and we struggle to find experts who understand people with disability. And there is this, I'm not going to say fear, but there is this hesitance to work with para-athletes because you're like, we don't know. So I feel such platforms are important to even talk because there is a medical aspect. And I think you have Amek coming, there's Dr. Marcus here, and there are a whole lot of people who can actually talk extensively about this. Our head of sports science, our director of sports science is John Gloucester. So he's kind of guided the way for us in many ways to understand. So our attempt is, it's an athlete, and then you work backwards. Every need of an athlete is different. If you're working with a gymnast, their requirements are different. If you're working with a para-badminton player, their requirements are different. So that is why we don't have 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 athletes, because we feel we won't be able to do justice to the curated programs that we run. We have one athlete manager working with about 12 to 15 athletes, and then we provide all this support around them. I also have my colleagues, if I can just do a quick shout out. There's Aditya,
Absolutely.
Deepika, Diksha, Aditya. Can you all just
we
stand
have,
and...
yeah.
So they're the ones who are actually...
Can we
and
please
there's
invite you
Vipul.
on stage? Why not?
Yeah,
You guys
so,
are contributing. So please.
So
please
sometimes
come
you're
forward.
always seeing us.
Yes. Please
talk.
Please come ahead.
We were good.
Yeah, that's okay.
Don't want to take too much time, but...
Was on the
No,
stage,
no,
yeah.
no, not at all. But I think they're the ones who actually work with the athletes, right? They're the ones who have those very intimate, important conversations and then find the right expert. So the jobs, when we talk about disability sport, just like an athlete wants someone to hear their journey, and I can vouch that some of our athlete managers and teams are at places and events where even parents and friends are not there. They are at 3 a.m. on a call because, sometimes when you lose, you can't go face your coach, you can't talk to your parents. So who do you call? Your athlete manager, right? Or your expert that you're working with. So it's a very, it's a very sacred relationship that we build with athletes through their ups and downs. So any plan that you're doing on sport, have a lens of disability in it, and I had read that if the glasses was not invented, we would all be, people with disability naturally. So, yeah.
We'd request Rishi to felicitate our panelists. A token of appreciation to be presented. Thanks, Dilip, for emphasizing on the need to make sports more mainstream and also elaborating on how sports can be made more mainstream, while Deepthi showed us by initially alluding to the Siddhi tribe on how genetic strength can be tapped to create champion athletes. Now, of course, the results would take decades to show, but steps have been taken in that direction, and considering the genetic diversity of India, that's a commendable move indeed.